Aboriginal creation myths tell of a time, the dream time, when ancestral spirits wandered over an empty continent, singing life and shape into their sacred land. In this way, they gave form to the landscape and created every living creature. And so, Australia sung into existence. Australia's landscape is so extraordinary, and its wildlife so weird and wonderful, that even the most colourful creation myth hardly seems to do it justice. But unique as it is, life here is extremely tough. This is the story of how Australia's inhabitants have adapted to live in the cruelest land on Earth. Almost 3/4 of Australia is desert or arid land. Temperatures in the centre can reach 50 degrees centigrade, and there is usually less rain here in a year than a single wet day in England. Yet amazingly, Australia's largest mammal has made this furnace home, the red kangaroo. It's remarkable that mammals of this size can cope with such a harsh climate. But even more astounding is how they adapted to life here. From here. 50 million years ago, this entire island continent was blanketed in rainforest. All of Australia's wildlife lived in lush, green surroundings, like tree kangaroos and many other animals do today. Isolated from the rest of the world, a unique variety of species evolved. But a dramatic rise in temperature was to alter their comfortable existence forever. All but fragments of rainforest perished in the heat, turning the center of this once green continent into a red-hot furnace. Animals still here had to adapt or die. The first challenge to overcome is the intense and unrelenting heat. Red kangaroos deal with the worst of this by finding shade and digging to find cooler earth below the sun-baked ground. Another trick is to conserve as much water as possible. When resting, they don't sweat. Instead, they lick their forearms, so that saliva cools blood vessels close to the surface. Emus also cool down using surface blood vessels, increasing the flow to their long necks, long legs, and big feet. Their flightless wings have unique double-quilled feathers that protect them from the burning heat, so they can brave the midday sun without the need for shade. The second problem that desert dwellers face here, unlike their rainforest past, is finding water. There are no permanent rivers in Australia's deserts. They may flow temporarily after heavy rains, but all the water is soon lost again, evaporating in the scorching sun. Only with some kind of shelter can this precious water last. Such pools are like gold dust, the life source of the desert. Emus are often forced to walk huge distances to find them, as they need to drink every day. Red kangaroos can memorize pools they visited before, but they're also much better adapted to cope without a drink. They store more water in their bodies, in their muscles and their guts, than other mammals, and can withstand water loss that would easily kill a human. If there are plenty of green plants, the kangaroo's sole diet, they don't need to drink at all. But they can't always count on that. Red kangaroos have evolved broad, padded feet designed not to damage new shoots, but still their biggest problem is finding enough to eat. So how do they manage? This is where the red kangaroos excel. They are experts in saving energy, so can survive on the bare minimum of food. Kangaroos, and all of Australia's marsupials, have a much lower metabolism than mammals in other parts of the world. This means they use less energy, whether resting or on the move, so they can live on less food than other mammals of their size. A vital adaptation to desert life. Today, they number 10 million. But the kangaroo's ability to scrimp and save is nothing compared to their neighbors. In nearby creeks and billabongs, freshwater crocodiles have barely changed since their rainforest days 50 million years ago. They feed on fish, insects, crustaceans, and the occasional unwary bird. When times are good, they lay down fat in special stores along their tails. This, combined with an exceptionally low metabolism, far lower than the kangaroos, allows them to survive up to 2 years without a single meal. The only option when the red roo's food supply dries up is to move on. To get enough to eat, they have to exist on the hop. With this distinctive mode of travel, they average 15 miles per hour. But with a burst of speed, they may reach 40. It might not look like it, but at high speeds, hopping is actually much more efficient than running on 4 legs. Huge tendons in the kangaroo's hind legs recapture the energy of each bound as it lands to power the next leap, as if they were jumping on a trampoline. And the force of each leap pushes the gut down, which creates a vacuum, pulling air into the lungs. So when on the move, kangaroos can breathe without the use of chest muscles, saving yet more energy. Kangaroos are not the only nomads to live here. 40,000 years ago, humans first set foot in this desert. But how have we fared in this unforgiving climate? Aborigines survive by their exceptional knowledge of the land and its secret sources of food and water. This priceless knowledge is inherited through storytelling. Stories that relate to the magical dream time are passed from generation to generation. They retrace the journeys of the ancestral beings as they wandered over the empty continent, creating the world. In doing so, every feature of the land and its invaluable resources are recounted, to enable future generations to survive here too. But even if you know what food you're looking for, how do you find enough? The best strategy is to keep on the move and eat from a wide variety of sources to avoid any becoming depleted. And an intimate knowledge of wildlife is essential. Eggs from the freshwater crocodile are usually laid in holes within 10 meters of water. After laying, the female leaves them unguarded, only returning when the babies hatch. So with the right knowledge, it's safe to raid her nest. By breaking open the roots of certain bushes and trees, witchetty grubs can be found. These plump white insects are larvae of the ghost moth, an important source of protein said to taste like almonds. They're usually cooked in ashes, but can easily be eaten raw. The trail of a certain ant leads to a sweeter delicacy. Digging a hole as deep as herself, this Aboriginal woman can access the underground nest of the honey ant. Some of the worker ants are fed on nectar by other members of the colony, until their abdomens are so swollen that they can barely move. They become living storage vessels, tucked away deep in the nest where other ants can feed on them in times of drought. By easing them gently out with a stick, others can feed on this sugar source too. As women are traditionally gatherers, it's their task to collect plant food, which makes up half of their diet. And they have a special technique to help it grow. Fire stick farming, as it's called, works in two ways. First, it burns off the tall, dominant grasses, allowing a range of edible plants to grow in their place. So there is not only more food to eat, but it's easier to find. It is such an old practice that some desert animals have become dependent on fire stick farming for their food. Small marsupials like the bilby and the hare wallaby now live exclusively on the new shoots that grow out of the ashes. But this has left them vulnerable. Where fire stick farming is no longer practiced, these animals are becoming extinct. The other purpose of these fires for Aborigines themselves is that the green shoots attract hungry animals which they can hunt. Lack of food certainly favors a nomadic life, which is much easier if you have wings. A third of Australia's birds are nomads, which explains their success. This is what they fly hundreds of miles for. But can you survive in the heart of the desert if you don't keep on the move? One dune complex can be home to 47 species of lizard. In fact, more lizard species live in Australia's dry interior than anywhere else in the world. Reptiles survive the heat better than mammals, as their scaly skin doesn't lose so much water. They keep cool by being nocturnal, or finding shelter in caves. Each has its own peculiarity. Some have a frill to disperse the heat, and others, like this bicycle lizard, keep their entire body clear of the hot ground. Lizards have adapted better than most to Australia's drastic climate change, and do just as well in desert as in rainforest. They don't have to wait for the rains to breed, because they lay eggs underground where it's always cool. After laying, the female leaves the eggs alone. They will be hatched without her by the desert heat, which is for once an advantage. Lizards don't suffer from the lack of water, as most of them don't need to drink. Instead, they get the fluid they need from food. Or sometimes by more elaborate means. The thorny devil has a special technique of absorbing water from dew or the occasional rainfall through its skin. And its scales channel water towards its mouth to drink. But how do lizards find enough food in this seemingly empty place? Bizarrely, their success is directly linked to the arid soil. Australia's ancient Earth is the least fertile anywhere in the world, containing just half the nutrients of a desert in Africa. Yet one plant thrives here. Spinifex, as this dry grass is known, copes so well in this baked earth that it now covers a quarter of the continent. But the poor soil that it grows in makes its leaves so hard and fibrous that they're completely inedible. That is, to all except one animal. The termite. Termites are the only animals that can cope with the tough texture of Spinifex leaves. And without any competition, They have spread across the interior unhindered. Which makes them a reliable food source for anything that eats them. And most lizards do. So some animals have found a loophole that allows them to survive, even in this exceptionally infertile soil. And surprisingly, so have some trees. And not just a few. As temperatures in Australia rose, most of the rainforest trees died out. But one, the eucalyptus, adapted well to the new dry conditions and seized its chance to spread. There are now over 700 species of eucalypts in Australia's dry, dusty earth. To save precious nutrients, they grow fibrous leaves full of poisons, so that, like the spinifex grass, nothing can eat them. But one animal has broken through its defenses. The koala. In fact, it eats nothing else. So how do they stomach such an unappealing meal? Koalas have very long digestive tracts, full of specialized bacteria, which must be passed on to their young through their feces. They carefully select leaves with the fewest tannins and the highest oil content. But despite munching through 1 kilo a day, they still gain very little energy. The price they pay for this poor diet is to sleep an epic 19 hours a day. And since they spend 5 hours feeding, there is little time for anything else. Koalas have another way to save energy. They're bears of very little brain. The brain consumes more energy than any other organ, so if all you do is eat and sleep, a small brain probably makes sense. But there is an upside to this poor diet. The chemicals in the pungent leaves means koala flesh is not popular to eat. So despite their sluggish way of life, koalas can still sleep away their days in relative peace. But how do other forest dwellers cope? The dawn chorus of the kookaburra, according to Aboriginal legend, is the signal for the sky people to light the great fires that will warm the earth by day. Kookaburras share the eucalypt forests with koalas, using hollows in the tree trunks to nest in. And they too struggle to get enough nutrients. Kookaburras are the largest kingfishers in the world, but they no longer live over water. So instead of diving for fish like their rainforest ancestors, they pounce on whatever prey they can find on the forest floor. But finding enough passing prey is a real challenge. So how do these large kingfishers cope? Like koalas, they make big sacrifices to live here. Most birds breed at 1 year old, but young kookaburras wait 4 years before they mate. 5 or more helpers stay with their parents to rear the next clutch, and they all work hard to feed the hungry chicks. The family will also band together against would-be egg thieves like monitor lizards, which would be hard to fight off alone. This cooperative breeding clearly helps the new chicks to survive, but at a big cost to the helpers, who forego mating themselves. But just as in deserts, there is one animal that there is no shortage of: termites. So there is unlimited food here, if you can get at it. And this strange-looking creature has just what it takes. Found only in Australia, the short-beaked echidna laps up termites with its long tongue, the perfect tool for this diet. Because termites are so widespread, these termite eaters are found in every corner of the country. Numbats, also unique to this continent, live almost exclusively on termites too. They break open tree hollows to find them, and employ a tongue even longer than the echidnas. This foot-long device gets a new coat of sticky saliva every time it yawns, enabling it to eat 20,000 termites a day. All deserts suffer from lack of rain, but nowhere is the waiting period as unpredictable as in Australia. As the water pools dry up, so too does the food for these freshwater crocs. Fish die, insect numbers decline, and birds fly away. With no food left, they have only the fat in their tails to live off. They have to cover themselves in mud as a protection against the searing sun. When all the pools have dried out, they search for a refuge to hide in. Walking is hard, hot work, so they travel in the cool of the evening. Red kangaroos are much harder hit. The frequency of drought here means the young kangaroos have only a 40% chance of making it to 1 year old. When a mother's milk dries up, she will evict her baby from her pouch, ready or not. And if it's not yet weaned, it has no chance of surviving on its own. For the mother, though, tragic as this is, all is not lost. Female kangaroos have evolved an incredible backup plan for this exact situation. While one baby is in the pouch, an embryo is already in her body waiting to grow. It only starts to develop when its sibling leaves the pouch, either through death or on reaching 8 months of age. Remarkably, the female can then produce 2 types of milk for each joey to suckle at the same time. It's the perfect adaptation to life in this uncertain world. Males have their own way of coping with drought. When their testes get too hot, they stop producing sperm. But this sterility is easily reversed when conditions change. In severe droughts, though, red roos can lose well over half their population. And they're not the only ones to struggle when rain is absent for so long. The Aborigines rely on their detailed knowledge of the land to see them through. Just like their predecessors 40,000 years ago, they know how to find water underground when their usual waterholes dry up. The desert sand protects this water from evaporating, and the grass acts as a filter. So digging in the right place can produce a life-saving drink. And in desperate times, every drop of water helps. Burrowing frogs can shut down body systems and live dormant underground for 7 years. Even in the hottest months, they don't dry out, because layers of dead skin act like a cocoon. They stay alive this long by using water stored in their bladders after previous rains. And Aborigines know how to access this in an emergency. Many hills, rocks, trees, and waterholes are sacred sites to Aborigines, because these sites are believed to contain the powers of the ancestral creation beings. But they're also of great practical importance for those who live here today. Even when times are hard, the plants and animals around these special sites are never touched. So when the drought is over, it's the species from these sacred places that restock the area around, preventing it from turning irreversibly into a barren wasteland. And at last, like a dream from the distant past, the unimaginable arrives. Without any warning, storms that hit the west coast sweep inland right across the arid center, bringing the most precious gift of all, rain. long-awaited rain fills the empty pools that become once again the life source of the desert. Water is channeled far into the parched interior. The dry, cracked earth quickly revives and transforms into a sea of green. At the end of a drought, there's a golden period of plenty, but everyone's already on borrowed time. Red kangaroos eat their fill on the juicy new shoots. The green grass boosts the mother's milk supply, and soon joeys are filling the female's pouches. They're quick to explore the world outside their mother's pouch, but won't be fully weaned till they're a year old. If they can make it to 2, they may get a chance to breed themselves. The male's testes are quick to recover, but before they mate, they fight for mating rights. Most fights, real or practice, are one-sided. He who's biggest wins. Even females with a newborn joey will still mate, to make sure they have a standby embryo waiting in the wings. In this way, red roos can quickly rebuild a population decimated by drought. And they're not the only ones who seize the day when water's all around. The rain triggers some termites to develop wings, and they take to the air to breed. New colonies grow rapidly as the females can lay 1,000 eggs a day. Now the waterholes are full, burrowing frogs can shed their skin and emerge from their long exile underground. They'll mate and lay their eggs as fast as possible, to give the tadpoles a chance to become frogs before the water's gone. The arrival of water suddenly triggers dormant shrimp eggs to life. The same deadline sparks them to mate immediately and produce eggs that, due to this highly unpredictable climate, can lie in wait, if need be, for 25 years. Emus too breed after rain, so that their chicks hatch while there's plenty to eat. Unusually, the male's the one who incubates the eggs, leaving the female free to mate again. And it is the male who chaperones the chicks for the first 6 months of their life. Sensing this sudden change in climate, and as if from nowhere, the nomads of the air return. Budgies and other birds waste no time in pairing off to breed. Taking advantage of the plentiful food and water, they rear their chicks while they can. Some even squeeze in 2 clutches before the weather can change their luck. In this race against time, everyone must make the most of this rare opportunity. Because no one can predict when rain will come again. One thing's for sure, this water is not here to stay. It certainly isn't the easiest land to live in. But both people and wildlife have found remarkable ways to deal with the many challenges that have faced them. From their ancient rainforest beginnings to the desert extremes of today, they have all been tested to their limits. Australia's wild inhabitants have not only survived, they've thrived.